Aramusha in 2018 was a different breed. How he played and how I played him was that if you press into me, while I technically had no real good offense, that was your first mistake because my timing was so impeccable with my heavy feints. I could easily punish you by heavy feinting and going into a fast full blockade that looked like it was soft feintable, but it wasn't. And then boom, you actually got ring the bell or you got kicked in the baby maker. You made it. Welcome back, you BEA beautiful souls. You came to another For Honor video. I get this question asked so many times. Why don't you play more Aramusha? Why haven't you gotten past rep 70 ARM or Aramusha? And was Aramusha really that good back in the day? Please play more Aramusha, and the only way that I will play Aramusha is if someone donates to me, because this character is just not fun for me. Because you want to know why? Because I actually played Aramusha when he was good, and when I mean good, I don't mean a strong character. I mean he was satisfying, he took some skill, and there was a skill curve to him. He had a lot of damage back in the day, and he still does, but he also was quick on his feet, incredibly fast compared to his center block moments that you play currently. Now, I made tons of videos of Aramusha. As you can see here, there's 188 videos of Aramusha on my channel because I am an Aramusha main. I used to play Aramusha all the time. He was my favorite character, and you want to know why? Because there were so many cool things you could do with blockade, and his heavies sounded amazing. Not only his heavies, I guess the entire premise of the character was an enjoyable experience. His light attacks, his heavy attacks have that shoo. I just really liked how he sounded. His fashion is insanely good, like absolutely insanely good. Any of those Ryo Kenshin enjoyers always was one of my favorite things about Aramusha. He had a nasty blockade that had tons of different utilities, and it still has a lot of important aspects such as wall splatting, getting fast damage in with his heavy input on his blockade. He also has ring the bell for his opener, and there's a lot of good things I can say about the new Aramusha, but there's also a lot of bad things I can say because I've played the previous Aramusha, the Aramusha before he was just a ring the bell monster. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you the exact reasons on why I don't play him anymore, because I get this question asked so many times. So once someone asks me that, I'm just gonna simply put in a command that directs them to my Aramusha video that is being worked on right now as we speak. I'm tired of answering this question, and I think people should finally know the truth, even though I said it a billion times. But now this is going to be in a factual video that's going to be pretty much all my thoughts on the process of what I want him to be, and something that will never actually come to fruition because JC's in charge, and JC only wants to see more toe picks from Afira. I think that's pretty much why they're ignoring Aramusha. And it's not like he doesn't need work, and it's not like he actually doesn't need nerfs either. But in this video, I'm going to talk about what I saw in old Aramusha, because old Aramusha was something else. So honestly, before we get to that, I'm just gonna show you guys some clips in the background here. You know, I was playing ranked back in the day. This is 5 years ago. So Aramusha is not what he is now. Shaman is basically the same character, just a few buffs here and there, but the biggest weakness that Aramusha had back in the day was backstepping. You'll see here that most high-level players will start to do this. You can do this on one timing, and you would be safe from all of Aramusha's mix-ups. All of Aramusha's mix-ups. You see that backdash right there? Absolutely disgusting and the worst way to play the game. You literally backstepped 4 days. I'll make another video going on, like talking about the worst things about For Honor back in the day, but right now, that was what I had to deal with as an Aramusha player. There was no way that you could actually have any offense against a good player, and if a good player would most likely anyways go ahead and parry you, because those 4MS attacks were pretty much reactable to any good player at all. You know, the 1% of players that we fought, they would parry that instantly. I would parry that 100% of the time. I don't think I've ever gotten hit by a deadly feint at all, even if it was delayed. I swear to God, they were like one of the easiest parries. As soon as you go into that finisher heavy, it was a free light parry. Just imagine going into your chain mix-up as an Aramusha and getting parried every single time, not being able to use your opener, forcing your playstyle to be completely reactionary. The only good thing that Aramusha had back in the day was 25 damage heavy parry. So when he parried, he got that top heavy, and that's a free 25 damage, and that was a huge threshold that would break the HP pool for other characters. It doesn't matter if you got a light parry, a heavy parry, you always got a huge amount of damage. Absolutely ginormous. And other characters only get about 15, you would get 25. You and Warlord, those two characters were insanely good. And mind you, this character had no dodge attack. This character just simply stared at someone and waited to parry or dodge the bash on a prediction to punish with the guard break or try to get some nasty blockades. You know, that's pretty much the entire character. You just stare at people, and if you decide to use deadly feints, they will just backdash. And the crazy thing is, when you go into your heavy finisher, you couldn't even guard break them. You would just whiff, so you had to do nothing. It was a horrible experience playing him. The shaman here in the background utilizes it, I'd say like 50% of the time. I don't know why they didn't parry my deadly feints, but probably didn't have the reactions. But if you have good reactions, decent reactions, 200 ms reactions, you can parry this. But all my deadly feints right there, they were just backdash. And this is a shaman thing to do, where you kind of just backdash mix-ups to go into your bash mix-up or your bite mix-ups, especially if they're bleeding. That's something that's super scary that good shaman players will try to utilize, but the backdashing itself is super strong against Aramusha. It negates all of his mix-ups, period. All of them. So my playstyle of Aramusha essentially consisted of being a turtle, and I had to defend against all options. Forward dodge bashes, you have to dodge on prediction to punish or light them correctly. You had to predict if they were going to just do a back dodge, but the back dodges were pretty much 100% consistent on avoiding his damage values if you were paying attention and if you were reacting. I don't think you had to be a reactor to do that, because it was just one simple timing, and Aramusha could not punish and could not get any damage off whatsoever. But 25 damage, as you can see there, on a heavy parry. The shaman doing that from neutral is incredibly risky. You should never do that as a shaman player. Just even now, back then you shouldn't have done it either, but right now you don't do it at all, because it's a free parry. Any good player knows that the second hit of the first 2 hit chain attacks are free parries, and even so for the second 2 hits of the chain, if you decide to let that fly, which I personally would never ever really let that fly, I would just go for a guard break or anything besides that, because the bleed mix-ups are what you want to use. And as you can see, I get 40 damage heavy, so that's a really big thing about Aramusha back in the day. But let's talk more about his bad things. I'll talk more about his good things afterwards. A lot of bad things that Aramusha had, like not being able to go into any strong pressure whatsoever. Mind you, he did not have the ring the bell, and this guy went for a parry because he thought I would just let it fly, but I don't really let heavies fly as Aramusha that much, and that's something that you have to learn back in the day, because a lot of people were able to parry these because they weren't hidden. They didn't have that 100 ms hidden indicator thing that we do have now. So things were much more reactable back in the day. You'd fight reactards and you could not do anything. You'd fight berserkers who could literally parry everything, and it was just not that fun unless you were fighting a super casual gamer. And someone that was sweating their ass off against you, you had to pick a strong character, and that strong character was consisted of like maybe Warlord, Warden, Shaman was also very good too back in the day, due to her very strong feint mix-ups on her bash. It was unreactable. She had like a huge crazy flicker. The thing about Aramusha is that he actually had a high win rate, because the people that played him were good players that could parry. So if you could parry, you could get a 25 damage punish on a heavy parry, and that is huge. That is actually huge. Whereas characters that people loved playing Orochi because he could just easily, triple light chain spam back in the day. And those were really fun to do because you mix them up with your heavy attacks and people would just eat that. But with Aramusha, you couldn't even do same side light attacks or the chain from a light attack from left to right. You had to go left into top light, which was so ridiculous. You were limited in so many ways. One of the best parts and most annoying parts about Aramusha back in the day, Centurion as well, is that his heavy attacks were so fast on their startup that it was impossible to guard break him. I believe it was like 100 ms guard break vulnerability. It might have been like 0. It felt like 0, but you could not guard break him. Centurion tried to guard break me there. It was just impossible. I honestly could not tell you how many times when I fought in Aramusha, I would just stare at him. I would literally just stare at him because he was one of the least frightening characters if you just stared, because if you dodge on that deadly feint timing, boom, no mix-up whatsoever. If you dodge the finisher heavy, boom, no tracking on those finisher heavies at all. Mind you, this is before they buffed his tracking on his chain heavies and his finisher heavies and the hitboxes in general. This character had no forward momentum at all. 0, nada. He's one of the slowest moving characters in the game, and I still think he's one of the slowest characters in the game still. You compare it to like a character like Raider, who can side dodge literally across the world. in one leap, whereas Aramusha, when he side dodges, it's tiny. It's incredibly tiny. It's like, it's minuscule. It's basically a 2-incher compared to like Raider's Throbbing Venom's 19-incher, you know? Like Aramusha has like no distance game, and one of the most important things about For Honor is to consistently walk backwards. High level players do this all the time. Pro players do this all the time, where you have to walk constantly backwards, because the spacing in For Honor is important, as most fighting games are. Spacing is being able to control spacing makes and breaks a character. Look at a character like Shinobi, who can constantly walk backwards, who can do double dodges and avoid certain mix-ups, 50-50s, because he can space you out and make it so that you have to push towards him and you can't walk back yourself unless you have the health lead. Now, Aramusha had all of these weaknesses here, all of these weaknesses. No forward momentum, no hitboxes, high stamina usage, absolutely high. And also he wasn't even able to get a light attack or a heavy attack when he's out of stamina and he guard breaks somebody. It was so sad. You throw a light when you're OOS and they would just block it. It was incredibly, I dealt with that for years as Aramusha. And mind you, this is like Aramusha 2018, 2017, or not even 17. This is like 2018, 2019. There is another previous Aramusha that is a little bit different and much cooler in my opinion when it comes to specific move, and I'll show you guys right now. So this is my homeboy Prince Yasuke, and he did this like a long time ago, but basically what Aramusha can do, he can dodge and dodge. You know, Highlander does his wave stance or wave dashing. Aramusha had that just on neutral dodges though. Check this shit out. It's actually so good. Such a good counter to Highlander's Caber Toss mix up back in the day when he couldn't feint it. Double dodge into a really fast recovery dodge attack. Absolutely insane. Borderline broken. Pretty much broken actually, because a lot of characters had good recoveries on certain moves, and Aramusha could abuse the crap out of this. It was the craziest thing ever, and it was so broken, but since the character had like no offense whatsoever, it kind of made it a little bit okay, because it was more used as a defensive mix-up, and you could just heavy into guard break him most of the time. And I can't believe he has iframes there. That's so crazy. As you can see there, that sick-ass forward dodge into the side heavy, Aramusha used to have that, and now he doesn't have it. It's more of his running attack. You'll see him doing running attacks on that. It comes on left and then the right, and you can block it afterwards, but you could do this from neutral. It was the coolest thing ever. It didn't have any cool properties or any strong properties besides that iframe there, but it didn't matter. Like, you don't need that. You don't need that because it made the character so cool. It made him so cool, and now he doesn't really have anything really special from neutral besides spamming the ring the bell and revenge locking you. Another great thing too, if you notice, Aramusha gets that guaranteed top light. That guaranteed top light. Let me just show you guys real quick. Watch this. Watch this. Watch this. He gets a heavy off, right? No, hold up. Let me show you guys right here. Let me just show you guys. He gets that guaranteed top light. That guaranteed top light happens every time you land a heavy, and I believe a deadly feint as well. It was so freaking sick. Hold up, where is this? Where is it? Where is it? Hold up. Where's it, Yasuke? Where is it? Show me. Right here, right here. Boom, boom. That is guaranteed for 42 damage. And back in the day, mind you, remember, all the characters, pretty much most characters had 40 damage light parries. Lawbringer had 50 damage light parries, okay? Actually insane damage values back in the day. But as you can see there, Aramusha had this sick double hit move, and it was so satisfying. A lot of people complained about it because it felt like light spamming, and light spamming was a big issue back in the day, especially for like the old gen console players, because they were the majority of players. And Ubisoft didn't really have a design philosophy yet, because they were pretty much new at it. They had no idea what to do due to For Honor being such a new game, and it was hard to balance. Any game is hard to balance, especially if you don't know what you're doing, especially if you're a company like Ubisoft, where there's exploits being abused in championships, you know? Tons of exploits, and they just continue to let the game play on. And so that's why Ubisoft decided to change Aramusha altogether, because they didn't know what to do with him and they didn't listen to the right people. But that's just something I'll go over at the rest of the video. But as you can see here, Aramusha has about 3 different techniques that he didn't have before when I played him. I think I only played Aramusha a little bit when he had this cool variation. He had that guaranteed top light. He also had that double dodge mechanic, which was super freaking OP. It was like quadruple dodge, actually. It's just fast recoveries on his dodges. It looked insane. It was the forward dodge side heavies is what he used to have, and then he also was able to get that guaranteed top light, which was so freaking cool. It's probably one of the coolest things. And the crazy thing is that Ubisoft has given these similar types of moves already to other characters. You remember, I mean, do you even look at Griffin? Griffin with his double tap attacks, you know, his light, that's basically the same thing. It's literally the same thing, actually. It's pretty much the same thing. Lawbringer can also do this now too, with his heavy into tap mix-up, or heavy into tap guaranteed damage. It's 22 damage, guarantees that tap, and then boom, that's the character. That is actually the character. That's what Aramusha used to have. It's just that the indicator came up beforehand, and a lot of players were confused. They're like, oh, I can't block this unblockable light attack. And the crazy thing is we have Zhenhu, which has an unblockable 600 ms light attack. And so how far we have come, and that's what Aramusha was at release. He was a character that had no openers, but if you could play really defensively and get some nice parries and punish your opponents for attacking you, then he was fairly strong in the right hands. But that's only if you're pairing stuff. And a lot of players didn't really want to do that. They just wanted to keep attacking. And I remember my homeboy Prince Yasuke, he shouted me out when I was starting my channel too. So if you guys haven't already subscribed to him, he's super chill dude. He still makes For Honor content every now and then, but you know, For Honor content is pretty dry, so we're bringing in the nostalgia back, because seeing For Honor how it was back then, there was a lot of pain, but there's also a lot of good there. A lot of heartwarming moments. We're not just looking at this through a rose-tinted a lens, in my opinion, because I've been through there. You know, I feel like I know what's going on. I understand how the game works now. Back in the day, we had no idea what we were doing. That's the funnest part about For Honor, right? We just do whatever the hell we want, and we had a good time. But now, since characters are so strong now and they're so gank heavy, I think we get a little bit annoyed at the game. And also want to talk about Aramusha in old gen console, PS4, Xbox versus PC. PC is a whole different breed. On console, Aramusha was quite a strong character. 600 ms attacks, 700 ms attacks. Now, mind you, all of the fast attacks in the game right now on live, they're about the fastest. I think we have it is it Peacekeepers? I believe it might be Peacekeepers top bleed softening, which is 366 ms. And then there's also Storm Rush, which has hidden indicators that make it one of the fastest moves. But it also, I believe it's a 600 ms total, and then they hide about 200 ms of the move, or 300 ms. I forgot which one it is. I think it's 300. But those are incredibly fast moves in comparison to what we had back in the day, which was incredibly slow moves, like very, very slow moves that are just incomprehensible that we played the game at that slow of a pace to what we play right now. And Aramusha was good on old gen console, but he was very bad on PC, except if you could parry. So he was a noob stomper and pub stomper on console, and then he was really very mid in PC. You're basically throwing if you picked him in duels and 4v4. Well, 4v4, I think he was a little bit better. I'm not gonna lie to you. In 4v4, he was actually not that bad, but in 1v1s, he was absolutely atrocious, and you had to parry. If you got parried, you get 25 damage. And then one thing I remember back in the day, that every time I got ring the bell, people would always write in my comment section, why don't you ever guard break? Because the thing is, crossplay did not exist. So I was fighting other PC players. So other PC players probably play like 30 hertz and 60 hertz most likely. But even if you're playing on 30 hertz, they can see. And even though they're flashed and blinded, they have no input delay. And they're allowed to see the guard break animation, and then they can counter guard break. Whereas console players, they didn't have enough reaction timing to counter guard break. So that was the problem. So that mix-up where you ring the bell and you guard break, that does not work. That does not work. It is a pipe dream. It's never worked for me, like, ever when I played Aramusha in my entire career. It just does not work. But on console, it works all the time, because most console players are just brain dead players. that was the art. It was hilarious. But that was just a small tidbit about the Aramusha history. And we're starting to get into some of the good stuff. We pretty much delved into all the bad things that made it feel horrible to play Aramusha, but he had so many fun attributes to him now, especially when you compare it to new Aramusha today, 2024 Aramusha. They took everything from him, literally everything. So listen here, fast heavies. Fast heavy. I remember the day. Like it was yesterday when they took fast ass Aramusha and they slowed him down. I don't know why they did it, but they ruined my boy, and it was just the worst time. I tell you what, it was a horrible timeline. Yo, so I finally found the video right here. This is the video right here. My disappointment is immeasurable. Aramusha nerfed hard, actually nerfed hard, dude. This video did so much damage to my homeboy. It did so much damage. Look at that. We have 1200 comments on that video. Actually insane. Slow Musha. Oh my god, it's so sad. Dude, look at that. That's so sad. That's actually so sad. I wish that they never did this. This is such a horrible timeline to live in. Actually horrible timeline. Look how slow those heavies are, man. Those heavies are so slow. And of course, the deadly feints are still reactable too in this timeline. The heavies were just so freaking slow, and it felt horrible to play as, especially when you've played Aramusha previously. And having those fast flowing heavies being able to cancel into a blockade. You've seen in my previous those videos that I did a heavy feint, hard feint into a blockade. You cannot do that as consistently anymore and as quickly anymore. You can do them, and I still do it, but you can't do it as fast. And it's very sad too. It's honestly super duper sad, because it was such a high skill curve thing that you had to like look out for animations, look for indicators, and be ready for it and bait stuff out. That's how you played Aramusha. Now you had to play him, you had to just play him as Ring the Bell Simulator, which is a strong mix-up, but it's nothing in comparison to like other characters, right? Just not as strong. And now he's completely fallen off the meta. Just completely. Still a okay character, but nothing in comparison to like maybe Varangian Guard or Pirate. This Aramusha right now is basically how he is at this moment in time. 4 years ago, he's still pretty much the same, but he doesn't have Ring the Bell, and that's pretty much his only weakness currently when I was playing him. He's still a pretty good damage heavies, and they took away, you know, his 40 damage heavies. As you can see right there, it's 32 damage for those neutral heavies. For such a slow attack, it's 32 damage from neutral, but in comparison to other characters, it's about standard. You know, it's very standard, and you're not able to get that much damage off anymore. They also nerf his ability to get a 25 damage heavy attack when you do get a heavy pair. As you can see there, I tried doing it, but I think it's just not there anymore. So without your high damage punishes, you have to play really, really slow, and your mix-ups still don't work. And I used to run into them when they're out of stamina and go for a neutral light attack, because technically I have no pressure, only chip damage. And I mean, 6 plus 7 is a light attack, but it's not a real mix-up because you use so much stamina. I did 2 heavies and I was already out of stamina right there. It was so risky. It was so risky, but he has no offense, like no real offense at all. To this day, I still attest that they butchered Musha. This guy commented like 7 months ago. Let's go, dude. Oh my god. Oh my goodness. Still sad to say, still sad I didn't get to play old Aramusha. Now it's just Deadly Feint spam with recovery blockades. And yeah, and Deadly Feint spam, I feel like Deadly Feints are fine as a mix-up. I mean, look at Haktoon. Haktoon has Deadly Feint spam. She basically has 4 MS light attacks on her soft feints on neutral heavies, whereas Aramusha's on the finishers. And that's a fine character. That's a fine way to play the game. And she also soft feint kick as well as Aramusha, but his has like a longer animation, and Aramusha does revenge lock, which is good too. So there's good positive qualities about both characters, but most of his soft feints and his blockades come from just recovery canceling after every single move, and I actually despise that. I find that such a boring playstyle, since so many characters, pretty much every new character has a dodge cancel, has a cancel of a full block of any sorts. The Varangian Guard, we have Kyoshin, we have now Conquer, all those characters, they just essentially do the same thing, and that's why I don't find Aramusha that fun to play, because his full block is just a worse version of most of those characters. Black Priors is better. I would say Conquer's actually worse. It's probably the worst one, but Black Priors is better. Kyoshin's is better. You can literally just stand there the entire time, and everyone is so scared to try to attack you. He's literally the objective better character in so many ways. in so many ways. And ranking guard is just power creep. The power creep, she's virgin guard for a reason because the unemployed keep playing her. And it's crazy to me that they just decided to, let's just slap on the blockade after every single move. I think that'll fix the character. That'll fix the character, make it a lot more stronger, but not as fun to play. Not as fun to play at all. Another thing that they took from Aramusha was also his really cool and frankly pretty much useless blockade unblockable side heavy. You could use this to bait people out or get a really nasty blockade. I've gotten double blockades before because people would try to dodge attack that as an option select. And then you would pretty much do another blockade and be out of stamina too, mind you. You'd be out of stamina after doing it. It was a horrible feeling, but it was the most satisfying move in the entire game. I kid you not, literally the most satisfying move by getting a double blockade after landing that sick move. And honestly, I wish they kept it back. Right now, we have a very fast, heavy attack animation, which is good, and it's ideal to punish people in team fights, which does make sense. Like, it honestly does make sense to have, but I feel like the animation is just so lackluster, and it doesn't have that finesse. I'd rather have a character have really good animations and not be a top tier pick, like a top 5 pick character, or maybe even top 10 pick character, than have them with those, you know, this really janky animations. I feel like they just don't look that good. I mean, you guys tell me if you guys agree with me, if you think the animations of Aramusha are okay with his full block, but whenever, if you've played the previous Aramusha, his animations were just absolutely clean. They were out of this world. They were just so good. That's why I loved playing him, even though he was an underdog compared to most characters that had like no openers. Just being able to have unique animations, whether they are, you know, top tier for comp or not, which has pretty much been the bane of our existence since all the characters right now have really good ganks. They're fast, they're quick, they're strong, which I do want a character to be strong. But just having a great animation and a character that can be utilized with skill, it's just, I feel like it just makes the game feel a little bit more fun than having to strictly rely on something that you have to use this character, otherwise you lose, and that's kind of how a lot of the games are these days. I will say that Aramusha's blockades weren't as consistent because it really depended on certain characters' recovery cancels or recoveries after their specific move, because the top heavy blockade was not guaranteed on a lot of attacks, even on if they threw a heavy attack. So you know how we currently have Aramusha's blockade right now. Pretty much you're guaranteed the top heavy on all the instances, whereas the fast R2 is good for recovery canceling into another blockade, whereas the light one, you can get that on every single move since it is unblockable. Now, if they just made it strictly unblockable to begin with, that would have solved Aramusha's problem entirely. And the most important thing is if they gave Aramusha a heavy into heavy soft feint mix-up, it would have solved his entire problem on backdashing, and he wouldn't have to have this entire rework or nerf at all. That would have solved, I've said it in my videos time and time again on my previous Aramusha videos, that if they strictly just gave him a heavy into soft feint heavy, it would catch people who side dodge and back dodge just like Haktoon's does. I mean, Haktoon, she has so much offense that it is actually kind of scary in 1v1s. In 4v4 it's not as much, but in 1v1s, she has so many soft feints that you have to be ready for it. You have to be ready for it, and if you dodge it, even as Shigoki side dodge bash and a Lawbringer, you're gonna eat those chain heavy attacks, and those chain heavy attacks deal a crap ton of damage, like a crap ton of damage, so you have to respect that. And since Aramusha doesn't have that, he only was able to access deadly feints, you could just dodge on the deadly feint timing and avoid all mix-ups by backdashing or even side dodging. It meant that you had no presence in offense, and so if they just gave him that heavy attack, he wouldn't have to lose so many cool qualities about his blockade, his fast heavies. He wouldn't even need ring the bell. He could just be a purely defensive character like Nobushi. Like Nobushi at the highest level, she's horrible to play against a react hard. You can just block all your lights, kick, dodge all your kicks, parry all your light attacks. Most importantly, just block your offense. You know, whereas if you just gave that ability for Aramusha to have no strong neutral besides just going into chain pressure and having deadly feints and then having a really strong and hard hitting heavy attack that would make them second guess. But okay, well, let's not dodge anymore, okay? Let's not dodge anymore. We'll try to respect it. We'll eat the 10 damage light attacks, you know, the 10 damage tickling that Aramusha would give you. And if you decide to not respect him and go for the dodge and backdash while the Aramusha threw the finisher heavy or the side chainsaw feint heavy attack, he would just eat it and continue into his mix-up. Now, granted, this is thinking about what the changes we have done so far in Front, which is make it so that all the indicators are less reactable. Now the reactards can't parry literally every single thing. Even today, I'd say like most of the stuff, I'd say 90% of the moves in this game are still reactable. But if you're just playing like casually or just trying to play in Dominion, which is the main mode that they balance around, Aramusha having that is so beneficial for him, like just so beneficial. Having the 100 ms hidden indicator is so strong. It's great for the game in my opinion. A lot of the people who complained about Aramusha were the people who were an old gen console, and I get that because we didn't have a PS5 back in the day. You know, we were stuck on 30 frames per second when you're playing console. Even for PC, they didn't know whether the balance for PC or console, but now that strictly all the consoles can get 60 FPS, they have to make it so that the game is a little bit more unreactable now, way more unreactable. Without that, people will just stare at you, and that's also why I don't think, as I was saying before about Nobushi can be very good against a player who is not paying attention. High bleed damage values, very good defensive qualities about her kit. Whereas Aramusha is kind of in the same boat. If you can parry, if you can get some into your chain pressure, you can do a lot of damage and some cool stuff with your blockade. And even when I think about it, as a young lad, the guard did not go away when you dodged, so that was also another big problem when it came to offense in 4v4 and just dodging the orange/blue mix-up characters. And Aramusha would have suffered even if he got that heavy into heavy feint, but it would also allow him to keep attacking and keep doing chip damage, because eventually down the line, Ubisoft would have made that change and made it so that offense would become more viable instead of having such a defensive meta. It's honestly crazy to me that they didn't even decide or think that this was an option, because back then I'm pretty sure they actually didn't play their game. They still don't, in my opinion. They probably still don't. But okay, look at Jormungandr. This is old Jormungandr and old Tiandi with his neutral bash that has no forward startup. You just do it from neutral. The same thing for Jormungandr too. It's so crazy seeing this. But as I was saying, like the best way to fix this, they should have just asked an Aramusha player, which was basically, I was the only Aramusha player out there. There was like nobody playing Aramusha. Aramusha was a very rare character, one of the lowest picked, but very high win ratio. I believe he had one of the higher win ratios because there's only good players playing him. They could parry, you get 25 damage. If you could utilize those very fast neutral heavies, that would do a lot of damage. This character was a nightmare to deal with. I kid you not. Like, actually, a good Aramusha player was a nightmare to deal with because you couldn't guard break his heavies. If he could parry, he could dodge bashes. Well, to be fair, if you dodge bashes, you can't really do anything because you can't even punish them with the guard break. Bashes were pretty good, very good recoveries. And, well, bashes were okay recovery. I'm just saying Aramusha cannot punish due to the recoveries of players, of the characters in general. We've gotten very nice quality of life changes in For Honor when it comes to recovery, stamina, and all that stuff. And right now, or back in the day, you were struggling as an Aramusha player, so you had to play super slow. The game was just slower back in the day. It was just much slower. But Aramusha's 32 damage heavies were really strong. One important thing that I also want to mention too, that is there were a few things. There's like one thing you could do before with Aramusha that would catch back dodgers, but it was on a read and you couldn't do it on a reaction. You had to buffer the input. Was that if Aramusha was in his chain heavy mix up, as you can see right there, if you buffer the heavy attack, swap sides to the guard that's not on to not their guard, you can hit them. You can hit them on their guard and it'll do a crap ton of damage. And so those are just some of the things as an Aramusha main that you learn, that you had to learn the matchup knowledge. Now, if you didn't know the matchup knowledge, you had no idea what the character was doing, you wouldn't know this, and you wouldn't know how much suffering it was to play the character. But as you can see, this guy's just dodging all my mix-ups. There's not much I can do against a Peacekeeper who plays like super safe like that. I dodge back away. She also is one of the best dodges too back in the day, and you had to respect the crap out of her. Had to respect the 400 ms zone attack that comes out. Aramusha only had 4 ms on chains. Peacekeeper was an absolute nightmare, so disgusting to play against. And damage was pretty much everything in the game. If you got high damage values, you could pretty much win most of your games. And right there, boom shakalaka, that is the sex machine right there. Do you guys see that? Unblockable heavy into the blockade on his zone option select. Back in the day, you could zone to parry, and it would get rid of 2 options from your mix-up, so I was able to read that and get some nasty blockades on that. That blockade, I mean, just you can parry that unblockable heavy finisher, but a lot of people did not. A lot of people did not. They could try option select or they would try dodging. And also, I almost forgot that they took away his double heavy parry punish, dude. Holy crap, dude. That punish literally killed a guy. It's 40 damage. And then another 40 damage. Actually, yeah, it's 40 damage and another 45, I think. So it's 85 damage punish. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was so disgusting. That's For Honor back in the day, you know? That is For Honor. That's not the For Honor we know and cherish so much now, for sure. And right here is a perfect example of Centurion using a heavy into soft feint mix-up on the block stun on me, and I just went for a heavy parry, and he could not punish me. Actually insane. It's such a freaking disgusting character. Centurion also has this too, mind you. Centurion, his heavy attacks are impossible to guard break. So Centurions back in the day would just let their heavies fly or charge their heavies, and it would be so scary to deal with. So they were scary defensively, but they had a lot going for them when it comes to just being safe on parry. So safe to parry, it's safe to throw out heavies, but no offense, you know? So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Double-edged sword, you have to be good defensively, and then make good reads afterwards, especially if you're trying to get nasty blockades. Blockades on Centurion are very hard, especially if they know what they're doing, but it's also kind of a risk too. But since Centurion actually has an unblockable mix-up and Aramusha does not, Centurion definitely takes the cake there. So now that we've gotten pretty much all of Aramusha's old quirks or qualities that he used to have back in the day, I think I've explained myself thoroughly on why I can't play the current version of Aramuchacho. I've had it good. I've experienced Aramusha at his prime. He didn't have the best offense, and nobody ever really cares if you have the best offense, except for the unemployed gamers that played comp out there, or just play For Honor every single day on stream. You've seen everything, you've seen what Aramusha could do before, and you can see how satisfying it is. Aramusha can still be played in a satisfying manner, and you can get the blockades after every single move. But for me, since I've experienced working so hard for it, getting those blockades so easily just doesn't do anything for me anymore. It really doesn't. And it's no flack to any Aramusha mains out there that still enjoy playing the character and landing those blockades after every single recovery cancel. You know, it still takes some skill to use, but I just personally prefer the very fast flow heavy feint into a blockade. It looks so smooth instead of just going for a light, waiting for a blockade, going for raw heavy, waiting for a blockade, waiting for, you know, just blockade after every single iteration. It makes you really safe, and it does make you quite strong. However, he's been power creep to the high heavens. Full block characters are so much better. Aramusha, when he got buffed, he used to be actually one of the best characters in the game, but after every single DLC that's been added, every single buff, he's just become mediocre, but still a viable character to play in 4v4 and even in 1v1. And I don't even want to talk about the feat Juggernaut, which you've seen it in the videos, that if you do get knocked down, or if someone tries to throw you, if they even have revenge, you don't fall down. It's pretty hilarious. It was a feat that had to get deleted. This was game breaking, and another game breaking feat that needs to get removed is Shurikens from Shinobi. That character takes 0 skill whatsoever, especially with the tier 2 involved in this entire kit. That character needs an entire overhaul and needs another rework, and we're definitely going to talk more about him later. As you know, Ubisoft tends to streamline offense and make it a lot easier for new players to pick up and players to simply gank with and make them competitively viable, so that every single character can be used in the Dom series or just a competitive level. And I'm glad they're actually focusing on 1v1 tournaments, which is pretty sick to see, because I like seeing 1v1 tournaments come back. 4v4 is always fun, but it's always a cluster fudge of ganks and a huge amount of team fights, and sometimes you can't even tell what's going on. But if you're experienced enough, you should be able to, you know, realize what's happening on the field. But I've simply just talked way too long about the situation at hand. You guys know I love yapping about For Honor, and For Honor is still one of my favorite games, but I will never return to Aramusha as I did once before. If they sped up his heavies and made it so that you don't get blocked at every single move, and I 100% agree with that. I would rather him just have blockades without being able to spam it so unnecessarily, and then also allow him to improve the animations on his blockades, because you guys know I don't like that blockade. I also don't like that delay on that light attack blockade that he has. It's a weird delay. If you've seen the video that I've been playing in the background, the blockade on the top is so much faster and it's quicker. If they just made that unblockable, deal 20 damage, and that would be perfect with me. Then bring back the unblockable. Actually, the unblockable side heavy, those ones, that one I understand why they have to keep it, because it's a really good way for Aramusha to exist in the team fight without being completely useless. But those are my thoughts. I've yapped on long enough. I think this is gonna be about like a 30-40 minute video. So I apologize for that, but you guys know I love it, and hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm probably gonna do some other characters as well. Probably go into Shinobi for sure, because that character has gotten quite a big change, and I might even do Lawbringer eventually, because I think Lawbringer is not what we set out him to be or what we want him to be. And so to answer the question of the title is Aramusha, or was Aramusha, a better character back in the day when he was released compared to now? And my answer, in my opinion, is that he was a better character overall. He felt like Musashi. He had fast flow heavies. He had really insane looking blockades, and he felt quick on his feet, fleet-footed as they would say. And right now with the current Aramusha, you are slow. You can get blockades every single time you press it on a recovery cancel. Takes little to zero skill at all. And I just don't enjoy his slow neutral heavies. Who swings a katana that slow? Doesn't really look and feel that satisfying. I love slow moves. Raider has some of the coolest and slowest animations in the entire game, and I love playing him. Shigoki, the same thing, but with Aramusha, it just doesn't make any sense from an animation standpoint, or even just wielding a katana. A katana is really light. I think I've given you plenty of reasons on why Aramusha should have stayed the way he was, especially with the current balance decisions that we have gotten with the 100 MS changes, with not being able to see the indicator. It makes him a lot more unreactable on his deadly feints and giving him that forward momentum. Also removing the guard on dodge really helps offense in general and stops people from dodging you all the time, so you can heavies can track, and it makes you have a bit of a threatening demeanor, since your heavies can deal so much damage and have a decently sized hitbox. Even if you didn't get the ring the bell, which I would personally be just fine with, kept the same heavy speeds and the chain heavy speeds. He didn't need that because he would have the blockade to allow him to be very strong defensively. I don't even need that 100 MS vulnerability startup on the guard break for his heavy attacks. That was literally way too OP. That's how I removed it. But just being able to have those really cool flashy moves without being the best character in the game and working towards your win, I personally love doing that. That's why I play the character, and that's why I play, you know, every single character out. That's why I'm a Nusha main. All right, that's why I'm the only Nusha main out there. Shout out to all my Nusha mains. But that's my answer. You will have to let me know your answers. Write down your paragraphs, write down your essays, and tell me your thoughts on Aramusha, because I'm sure a lot of people were passionate about this character. I had a lot of passion for it, and he was my main. I played him all the time, and I swear if he came back on that first iteration or the second one, I would play him all the time. I would get him to rep 80. I would go on Reddit and spam posts for Ubisoft to add the prestige system so I could start his reps over while keeping all the fashion, and just do it all over and over and over again. And you guys know I love playing every single character, especially my girl Nusha. I would play Aramusha so much more, and especially on stream, make more videos on, because having that fast full heavy attack was just the most satisfying thing ever. Literally the most satisfying thing ever. But also, I mean, he could probably get some adjustments, like maybe an undodgeable heavy finisher, or undodgeable deadly feint, stuff like that would probably help him tremendously, but he wouldn't need that much. Same thing for my Boo Lawbringer, and I'm not even gonna talk about Lawbringer because I'm gonna start yapping again, because you guys know how I feel about Lawbringer. We'll make another video on it soon, and for Shinobi as well. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your comments down below. Bye bye. See you later.